Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Training Tips with Ward. In today's session and the video that follows, I'm going to be demonstrating the various techniques or methods that I use in training the directed jumping exercise. The directed jumping exercise is one of the most difficult exercises that we have in competition obedience. As a result, it takes a lot of patience to train and it takes a lot of time. So, with knowing this, what I like to do is to start early. In other words, start with a puppy. And the puppy that I train usually initially is about 3 months old, and the puppy range that I train in is 3 months old to 12 months old, up to a year. I break my training into two sections. The puppy, 3 months to 12 months old, and the adolescent and adult from 12 months to 3 years. In training with the puppy, I reduce the size of the ring. So the ring is much reduced, as you can see behind me, and you'll see in a moment in the regular setup with the puppy. The ring size is much reduced. The jumps are brought in so they're only 4 or 5 feet apart, and it's also shrunk from front to back. So it's not a long ring, it's short and it's narrow. The exercise, the directed jumping exercise, can be thought of as 3 main components. The first is the go out. The second major component from a training perspective is the turn and set. And finally, the third component is the return of the dog over the jump from the go out position. One of the first things that I would like to show you in terms of training this is that I use 3 plungers at the far end of the ring. 3 because normally we see 3 stanchions or 3 posts. If there is a 40-foot ring and a 50 by 40-foot ring, the 40-foot end of it, the end that you're sending to, is going to have a center stanchion and posts on either side. Now that is if there are 10-foot stanchion posts. What I do is set up with 3 plungers. On the plunger, I use a Velcro patch or a zip tie to place food on. The zip tie is cut off, and a piece of food, in this case it's a product called rollover that we get in Canada, you might use Red Barn if you're in the United States, is slipped over the cut-off end of the zip tie. So here we are with the ring setup, miniaturized if you will, that I have been describing, and you'll see a jump on one side, a jump on the other side. As it happens, there is a center line that's running down here. That's not by planning, that just happens to be. And you'll see at the end, there are 3 posts. 1, 2, 3, a center post, and the center post has a treat on it. So now I'm going to show you with Dash, and he's not a puppy, so you're going to have to bear with me on this. I will go through the stages that I would do with him if he were a puppy. And of course, Dash has been through all of these stages. I'd take, first of all, the dog, walk him up to the center post, very close to the center post, put him in, hold him back, and simply point to the treat. Sit, that's it. Point to the treat, look, look, and have him go to it. With the on the go command, I'm going to release him to the treat. Look, hey, what's that? Go! Yes! And he gets the treat. Sit. Now with a puppy, I do this similarly on a lead so that I have control over the dog. Hold him back, point to the treat, look, look, go, yes, and he gets the treat. I then want to build distance from the post back. In other words, it's as though I'm back chaining on this particular exercise, getting my dog to go from a point where I would be situated with him back there to a point up here. So I've got him on flexi simply because if he was a puppy, I would want him to get used to pulling the flexi out and letting it spool back in, that sort of thing. And also because it gives me control over the puppy. I can just stop him and pull him back or do whatever. So it looks like this. What's that? What's that? What's that? Go! Yes, good guy. What a guy. What a guy. Now, I like using the post because a post is, of course, what you see in the ring. Some people use a small plate or another item to mark and provide a treat. Others actually place treats on the post that can be picked up and brought back. From my perspective, I simply like to, in the first stage, get the dog to go out to the post and get his treat. So that when the dog sees a setup, when I'm standing at the far end with him and he's in a sit, he sees a jump, and his post's ahead of him. This is what I want my dog to see. I do this and build distance. I do this for the first, until he's 6 months old. All he does when he sees this initially is run between the jumps and get his treat off the post. Now, as the dog is learning to simply go straight out, straight to that center post, and avoid or ignore the posts on either side, I'm moving farther and farther back in the ring. You may recall my training mantra, which is stationary before moving, slow before fast, near before far, and attitude before accuracy. So in this case, we're building distance. And I started out near, and I'm moving back before far. So I have him with me. We'll say we have this puppy. I'm holding him. By this time, he's learning to go right to that post and get his treat. Go! Now, another modification that I make when it comes to the plunger in the center is I've taught my dog, and I teach a puppy early on, to target. And in this case, what I use for targeting is the extendable magnetic picker-uppers that you see in places like Pep Boys or Canadian Tire. I take that particular item and I slip it over the cutoff zip tie, like that. Now, the reason I do this is because I want the dog to go out there and get to that center post without a treat on it. So when the treat isn't there, I can train it by putting his target stick on there, having him go out and bump his targets. In this case, I'm going to send him out to the center post, and he's going to touch it. He'll probably knock the post over. There is no treat out there. There's no immediate payoff. I will mark it, however, and reward him. So it looks like this. Look. Go. Touch the target stick. So the next stage in training after training the go-outs with the puppy is going to be the turn and sit. And if you're already heeling with your puppy, like so, heel, and you know to back up and call your dog, you have, in actuality, got the turn and sit. So, watch me on this. Sit. Strut. Dash. Come. I'll do that again. Strut. Dash. Come. Yes. And stay. Strut. Dash. Sit. Now, as I make that or work that particular behavior, in calling him back, I'm extending my left leg, which makes him get his rear around properly so that he's nice and perpendicular with me. I'll do that one more time. Come on, pup. Come on. Yeah. Sit back. Come on. Strut. Dash. Sit. Yes. And I blow it to him. Of course, with a puppy, you're going to be working by holding treats in your hand, luring them around, as I've indicated here. Yes. The beauty of this technique is it prevents forward motion on the part of the dog. It doesn't require any props, and it's very easy for the dog to learn. They like it a great deal. Now I carry this then to another stage with an older dog, which is turning on the spot and calling for the sit. This means that it turns out this then turns into a game for the dog, and one that the dogs love. So, are we ready? Are we ready? Hang on, hang on. Now you can imagine I'm doing this with a puppy. This is the beginning, but later on it becomes part of my warm-up routine before I go into the ring. So, are you ready? Let's go. Yeah. Sit. Yeah. And here we go. Heel. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. Yeah, sit. Let's do it again. Here. Are you ready? Here we go. Yeah, sit. Yes. Another thing that I do in working on the turn and sit is I want my dog to, at the point where I want him to turn and sit, I want him to have some stationary work at that position on the turn and sit. The way I do it is like this. I put him into a stand, I step behind him, I walk up the left side of the dog, back behind, and then holding the lead, I call for a turn and sit, and when the dog sits, he has no opportunity to move forward. So it looks like this. Stand. Stay. Walk behind, up the left side. Good boy, good stay. Good boy. That's it. As I call for the turn and sit, my foot goes out as if to, there's a guide there for a complete about turn. With the puppy, this can't be done until he has a stand that he can hold for a few seconds so that you can do this. In all cases, the basic commands, the control commands, are taught as I'm doing all this with the puppy. So separately, I'm working on sit, down, come, stand, stay with the puppy. So imagine that I've got this puppy at the stage where he will stand, and then I go behind him and I talk to him, say stay, stay, come up the left side to his shoulder, stay, and there you saw why. Because this is the first opportunity that I will have to prevent or stop an anticipated turn and sit. Stay. And I go back behind him, and then I call for it. Dash, sit. Yes, good boy. Yeah. Now, we've got him. Okay. I now have my dog, so he will do the stand and the turn and sit on the spot where I want him to actually do it in the ring. Now what I want to do is to build distance behind him. And it looks like this. Here, stand, stay. Up the left side and back. Now I'm going to build this slowly. With Dash, of course, he knows of the game, so I can go back farther. But you would build this distance slowly. Remember, near before far, and stationary before moving. Dash, sit. Yes. Now he didn't make it all the way that time, and that's okay. We're not pointed on whether or not he gives a perfect turn on that sit. So we now have the go out, we have the turn and sit, and next is the return over the jumps. Well, with the puppy, I'm simply initially going to imagine that the bar was much lower, and the puppy is just going to step over it. So I would first of all just do some run-bys with the puppy like this. Yay! Good guy! And we'll try it back. Come on. Get ready. Here we go. Yay! All right. If the puppy has a sit-stay, I would move him fairly close to the bar, which again I emphasize would be down quite low. And tell him to stay. Come across and simply raise my right arm and flick my wrist and say nothing. Yeah, good boy. Similarly, on the left side, I would do the same thing. This time, it's going to be a case of raising the left arm. No verbal, just movement of the arm. Yes, good boy. So with time, I start setting my dog up farther back, but it's still in line with the jump. Tell him to stay. Spool out the flexi. And go up to about this position and simply raise my arm and flick my wrist so the line just gives a light tug. And have him come in. Okay. On my left-hand side, it looks like this. Yes! Oh, what a good guy. I continue in that manner until I have distance and the dog is routinely jumping with the movement of my arm. Only then do I start placing the dog more towards the center. And it looks like this. I move the dog toward the center, but I maintain my position. Yes, good boy, good guy. And from the other side, stay. Yes, good God. What I do then is, after I've moved the dog to the center and I'm still very close, I start bringing myself back towards the center. And in that case, I have to do it without the flexi on. So it would look like this. Stay. Turn and face him. Simply move my right arm out at this stage. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Let's go and do that again down here. Come on. Good boy. All right. Sit. Stay. Yes. Good boy. Now, slowly, I'm increasing the amount or the distance and the angle that the dog is away from the jump. So right now I've placed him well over off that jump on the far side there, and I'm going to give him simply an arm signal to go to that jump. Stay. Yes. And doing it from the other side, stay. Yes. With time, I start to move the jumps farther apart. So I would move them over to, let's say, here, and move this one over to here. At the same time, I would move them farther away from the wall, to the point where it's actually an actual ring size setup. Then I would, with the adult dog, start putting all of this together. The go out, the turn and sit, and the return over the jumps. All of this takes a great deal of patience and a great deal of time. I do it this way because I avoid having to put baby gates across between the two jumps to prevent the dog from coming down the center. And that raises another point. Normally, when I send out to the post, I never call my dog back down the center. And the reason for that is that dogs learn by association and consequences, and they chain events together. So if you always send a dog out to get something and then come back down the center, there is a risk inherent in this, in that the dog has learned to go out and come back down. So my concern there is forward movement. I would also add, though, that there are some excellent trainers that send them out to the center post, have them come back down. And the reason they can do that without worrying about forward movement on the turn and sit is because they have a very solid turn and sit. In other words, if the dog goes out and is asked to turn and sit, he does it, regardless of whether he's gone out and picked up a treat, brought it back down, and had it opened by the handler. Themselves, I set up so that they're about 10 feet apart, and I measure that by 3 paces plus a bit in terms of maybe another foot or so. So it would look like this: 1, 2, 3, and a bit. And from the center, 1, 2, 3, and a bit. The reason I use initially this 3-post setup is because in a ring that is 40 feet across and 50 feet long, if you use 10-foot stanchions, or if they use 10-foot stanchions on the baby gates, then you're going to have 4 sections. And if you have 4 sections, you'll always have a center stanchion. If there are no stanchions, as with the plastic gates, baby gates, then I usually put a marker on the floor to give the same impression. And all this will become more apparent in part 2 of the directed jumping series. So very briefly, very quickly, that's a quick summary of how I deal with the puppy and train the puppy early on to do the directed jumping exercises, or pieces of the directed jumping exercises. The go out, the turn and sit, and the return over the jump. Now, there are a lot of additional things to consider in this exercise. For example, what if there are no posts, as I've indicated here? What if it's a blank wall? What if the background that the dog is looking at is simply a curtain? Or what if it's baby gates with a sign on one side of the stanchion, like a large Eukanuba sign that they always seem to put out in the go-out rings at the National Obedience Championship? All of these will be considered in the directed jumping part 2 video that will follow this particular video. So, as I said, you've seen the go out, how I train the go out, the turn and sit, the return over the jumps, and that pretty well covers it. So until next time, where we're going to deal with some of the more intricate aspects of the directed jumping exercise, remember, have fun training your dog.